The story that you wrote for yourself, the story that you wrote with somebody else has changed and you have carried on going. And that is a symbol of your strength. And this day should be a symbol of your strength. 1000%, because your story has changed so much and yet you're still here. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. Welcome back to an episode that is being filmed in 27-degree heat. The UK is currently having a heat wave at the moment, and that's fine if you had air conditioning, which I do not. I'm relying on a tiny fan under my desk because I can't have the windows open because I have a very sensitive microphone, and you would hear absolutely everything that is going on outside. You would hear people cutting their lawn. You'd hear the kids playing on the street. Yeah, it's a lot at the moment. It's very, very, very warm. And I was just having this conversation with my friend. I was like, I've got to record my podcast episode. And she was like, oh my God, what are you going to wear? A bikini? Because it is just so hot. And my chair's leather. I'm sat on a towel because I am actually wearing shorts. I've got a nice top on, but I have actually got shorts on underneath this. But my chair's leather, so I'm sitting on a towel currently. But I am not complaining. This is like my favourite weather. It's my favourite weather to run in. It's my favourite weather to socialise in. I've been saying to my best friend all week, like, what are we doing? Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what are the plans? We've got loads of plans. It's actually our village carnival on Sunday, which is always hilarious. It's actually such a fun day. So yeah, I've got lots of plans this weekend, but I plan tomorrow to just sunbathe, do nothing, chill out. I've had a very, very busy week. And if you follow me on my Patreon, you will know that I've had a busy week because my Patreon episodes are also going live today, when they usually go live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But I've had to prioritise other things this week, so they are going live today too. If you do want extra content, if you do want 2 extra episodes a week, head on over to my Patreon. The link is in all of my bios. You'll be able to find it on any of my social media platforms. This week I have done an episode on family and guilt and feeling guilty about being the person that introduced your ex to your family. I've had one of my Patreon followers message me and say that she's really struggling with the amount of guilt that she feels. Her ex hasn't been very nice to her family, so she wanted me to do an episode on that. So I got straight on that, did an episode on that, and my episode today, this episode is actually from a request from somebody as well. So please always ask, if you've been listening to my podcasts, always ask if I've done an episode, or if you've listened and you are up to date and you're thinking, she's never mentioned this, what could I do about that? 99% of the time I've mentioned it on my Patreon, so I like to keep a lot of my content over there, keep it protected so people can't, just listen to it willy-nilly. So I have probably mentioned it on there, but sometimes I just forget what I've already mentioned, forget what I can talk about, and life goes on pretty quick. So I have loads of episodes in like what my life is doing now, and I wanted to do an update episode on like being single and where I'm at with half the year, like a half a year check-in. But one of my followers on Instagram messaged me and said, can you do a episode on a particular topic? So I have jumped at that, done that one first, because I've got plenty of time to give you a check-in on what is going on in my life, and I think that this would be more beneficial to her and probably a lot of my listeners. So I've decided to prioritize a topic this week. This week, like I said, has been manic. It's just been crazy. My life is mental. My sister's in the process of moving house. I'm in the process of putting new content together. I went to go see my best friend's new house last night. She's moved into a gorgeous new build, and I mean gorgeous. It is absolutely stunning, and she has the best taste ever. Like how it's just decorated and it's just stunning, and it's made me look at my house and think, I want to do that. I want to rip out my bathroom. I want to rip out my kitchen. I want to rip out my whole stairs and landing. I want to rip out my banisters. I want to rip this whole house to pieces, apart from the rooms that I have done. But I think I said that my house went on hold, but I went there last night and I thought, gosh, I really want to do all of these things. I want to lay new floor. I want to put new rugs down. I basically need a sum of about 30 grand to throw at my house to make the changes that I want to make. it's got me keen to start on my house again. And I don't know why I make these decisions in the summer, but I'm pretty impulsive, so it's probably going to happen. But I think I keep saying that I need to have my ceilings plastered because they've got lovely swirly ceilings that I hate. So I try and get rid of those first. So that would be on the top of my list first, to do the ceilings and the plastering. And there's a lot to do, but she's basically put a rocket up my arse. Because her house is stunning. When I was walking around it last night, I thought, this is absolutely gorgeous. It's 4-bed, 4 bathrooms. Absolutely just chef's kiss. It's perfect. I'm incredibly proud of her. She's 10 years younger than me, and she has bought the most immaculate house, her and her boyfriend, and it's finally down the road from me. I can walk there. It took me 15 minutes last night, and I am totally okay with that. So the only problem is that we came up against last night is the road that I walk down has no street lights. So I was saying to her, like, you know, it's all well and good in the summer, but in the winter, I'm probably going to have to walk a different way, maybe through the housing estate, which will take me a little bit longer because there are no street lights. And I've noticed this. I think I've run down that road twice in the winter and thought, this is a bit sketchy. So don't want to be walking down that road in the winter when there's no lights on. But yeah, I've got a bit of a bug now to have my house done, and I want it to be really light and airy, light floors. I don't want carpet downstairs. I want like nice rug, and just make it properly mine. And my office is like my vibe, my bedroom is my vibe, my spare room is my vibe. My bathroom, I was able to like paint the tiles and stuff, but I want to get loads done. So I'll definitely be giving you updates throughout the rest of the year on what is going on in my house, because I need to basically pull my finger out, because now I've seen her house, I'm like, I definitely want to make my house look just as good. So, and also, if you follow me on my Instagram, I had a little like not announcement, but just like I put a little story out the other day just saying that a big brand had got in contact with me, and I have not spoken about that yet, so I'm going to speak about that now. The brand that has reached out to me is Lululemon, which is huge. They have very, very kindly given me a voucher to spend on some of their ranges. And so I'm going to kit out my Pilates wardrobe and my running wardrobe with new Lululemon kit. And then I'm going to share it all with you. They basically want me to showcase what I'm wearing. And I think that when I started my Instagram, I wanted it to be somewhere where people could come and feel safe and share their stories and, you know, help them through their breakup. My Instagram was never a platform where I did paid partnerships, paid posts. You know, I was sponsored by Brooks, but I would get free kit, but I would never get paid for posting. And I usually find people's Instagrams like that quite annoying when everything's an affiliated link after affiliated link after affiliated link. And I 100% back the girls that are making a hell of a lot of money through doing that. Fashion accounts, like these hauls and the editing and everything that goes with it is huge. It is a full-time job. And so I have no issue with people's Instagrams like being that way. But I think if you are conveying a clear message, you don't want to get away from the message that you're trying to convey to your audience. And my Instagram has never been about trying to sell stuff, trying to, you know, influence you to buy, I don't know, the shoes that I'm wearing or like the sunglasses that I'm wearing. But I do get asked a lot about what things I am wearing, especially on my TikTok, more so when I post videos of me in my kitchen or stuff. I always get like, where's your top from, where's your trousers from, and where are your jeans from? And I think that's really nice because it is a way that you can make an additional income. But again, like, I don't reach out to brands, and I probably should, because I probably would be able to probably form another income on the side of it, but I just don't. I don't feel compelled to do that. However, Lululemon have reached out, and I think it is one of those brands where if anybody got the opportunity to work with a brand like Lululemon, they wouldn't turn it down. So I think they've probably noticed that I wear their leggings. I live, eat, breathe, die, do everything in Lululemon leggings. So they've probably seen that and then thought she already wears them, like, we could probably work with her. And it's going to be on a really casual basis where I won't be posting like, this is what I'm wearing. I will just appear more in their clothes, which is a very clever marketing strategy for definite. Very good advertising strategy, if I do say so myself. So it's going to be not a hard sell. It's just going to be, these are the items that I've been buying and these are the items that I've bought. But obviously I've got to make it clear that I was gifted a gift voucher, a very generous gift voucher as well. They liked the way that my content was authentic, and I like that because I hope that I do come across as being authentic and, not hard selling. And like I said, this is not me digging at any creator that has a platform that does the affiliated links and does advertise brands and stuff like that. I think you go for it, but that wasn't the purpose as to why I had my account in the first place. It was just because, I wanted people to start running. I started my TikTok because I wanted to help people through their breakups, and now they've been able to merge together. And I am so glad that I took that leap of faith and merged them together, because I went on my analytics the other day, and funnily enough, when I was just a sole running account, I think 80% of my followers were men. Which is wild, and now over 92% are women since I've had an influx in followers. I don't know whether that says that, a lot of women are going through breakups, or a lot of women find it harder to go through breakups, or a lot of women are more open about going through breakups. But yeah, over 92% now, when I looked at my analytics, are women, and I love that, because yes, this is a place where men can come as well, but I do really love the fact that, I've got a solid girl gang basically. And I'm a girly girl, I'm a woman that wants to support women, and I hope that comes across in my content. But also seeing that, it just put a big fat smile on my face, because I was like, yes, I'm here for the girlies, I'm a girl myself. It does make everything worthwhile. I do get excited when I see my analytics and it says stuff like that. And also I went from 16,000 followers to 23, literally in the space of about 4 weeks. 23,000 followers is crazy. And I think because it's so easy to grow on TikTok, and I've got 220,000 followers on TikTok and 23,000 on Instagram, it just shows the gap between how easy it is to grow on TikTok at the minute to how easy it is to grow on Instagram. And after Christmas, I can screenshot the messages to my sisters. I'm sacking my Instagram off. I don't want to post on there anymore. I'm not getting anything from it. But since I've changed up my content, and I hope this actually is visible, since I've changed up my content on my Instagram, I am a lot happier on that platform, and it doesn't seem like such a slog to post anymore. And I'm still posting about my running, and I post more about my running on my stories, and then I post more about my breakup on my actual grid. But I'm having a change up in my personal Instagram as well. I'm having a bit of a rebrand. I haven't posted on there since New Year's Eve, so I need to get a post out there, to be fair. Well, I say I don't need to do that because I post all the time on my Move with Lou account, but I want to get a post on my grid as well. I went somewhere on Tuesday and I got a nice photo taken, so got to post that this weekend and just delete all my other posts and just start afresh on my personal Instagram as well. And I'm going to make that private soon too, because that's been open, but I don't see the benefits of it being open anymore. So that's a little catch up from me. I haven't actually got that much else to report other than that everything is full steam ahead. Literally, I am working so bloody hard, and my mum was like, we used to see you all the time and now we don't see you. What is going on? And I'm like, I'm just working really hard, and I'm hoping that the outcome at the end of June will be totally worth it. I'll be in a different place on my TikTok, posting different content. I've got a very busy weekend of social plans, but also creating more content because I absolutely love it, and I love helping you guys. And I always sit here and I tell my story and I talk about things, and I think, God, I really hope this is helping. And a lot more of you are reaching out now and just giving me the reassurance that I need. I know I give you reassurance and I give you validation, but actually in doing so, with you messaging me and stuff, you are making it so I'm aware that these podcasts are helping and that, you know, it's helping towards your healing journey. So I am very happy with the direction that everything's going in. I had a bit of a crazy start to the year trying to find my feet with everything with this, but now I feel like I'm calm and I'm taking everything in my stride and I'm just getting on with it. And it's just working and it's easy as well, which is really, really nice. So in this week's episode, I'm talking about anniversaries. Now I know that I have done an episode on anniversaries before. I could not find it for the life of me, but I know that I've spoken about anniversaries in the past, but I think I've spoken about them as a whole. This is so weird. I know I always say that I'm a white witch, but this is very strange. I obviously got the message last week from the lady that wanted me to talk about anniversaries, specifically wedding anniversaries, which I'm going to talk about. However, tomorrow is mine and my ex's anniversary. Now, I don't give it any thought, but I did have the memories on my Facebook come up, and I always thought, like, you know, when I was going through my breakup, I'll turn the feature off, and then I turned it back on because I like to see what I was doing like a year ago and stuff. But it's like, this is what you were doing 17 years ago. But yeah, it went back to my 10-year anniversary, and I thought, God, it's around the time that it's probably going to be like mine and my ex's anniversary, and it is tomorrow. So luckily, I don't feel anything now, which is probably a good thing, and probably a good thing for me to share, because you'll probably then think, oh, do you know what? It's nice to be able to sit here and say to you, 3 years on, and I don't even think about my anniversary with my ex whatsoever. Now, it wasn't a wedding anniversary, I just mean the anniversary of the day that we got together, and that was the 21st of June. I think it's also his brother's birthday. I can never remember whether it's June or August, but it's one of the days. Anyway, so yeah, it was funny because I thought, God, I hadn't even made the connection last week. It wasn't until yesterday that I got that notification where I thought, oh, it's actually around the anniversary of like when me and my ex got together. How funny. And so I'm going to talk about anniversaries, but specifically wedding anniversaries or anniversaries of potential weddings. So like me, I obviously had my wedding in, booked, done, dusted, signed on the dotted line, and then never made it down the aisle. And I know there is a lot of my followers who are my listeners who have been through something similar and probably tried to cope with that the same way. And so, like I said, I know I've done an episode on anniversaries, but I'm going to home in on wedding anniversaries. And I sat and I made like a big fat long list of everything that I wanted to cover. So hopefully I cover everything in this. Hopefully I cover any unanswered questions or any like doubt that you were having. And hopefully this makes like wedding anniversary dates or potential wedding anniversary dates just that little bit easier to get through. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So like I said with my story, I had my wedding day all planned in. I can't for the life of me remember whether it was the 11th, 12th, 13th. It definitely wasn't the 13th or the 14th of August. I actually don't remember now. How mad's that? So it was around that time in August. I think it was the 12th. I'm going to say it was the 12th or the 14th. Can't remember. And when you go through a breakup, obviously there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of silence, there's a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of endings. And what people don't realise is that my ex left in Feb. So what people don't realise is that it's ongoing, and the pain is ongoing because you have to go through the process of going through these dates. And my ex left in Feb and I was supposed to get married in August. And that whole year previous was geared up for the fact that we were getting married the following year. And so January and February, I remember sitting on the sofa and being like, we should probably send the invites out to our wedding. And he was like, yeah. And then it prompted a conversation as to, do we want a wedding that we've just booked? Or do we just want to, you know, slip through the cracks, registry office? It was almost like in the January, I kind of noticed him getting a little bit of cold feet. But we had the conversations, we talked it round, and he was saying that it's just like a big day and do we want to spend all that money? He made it sound like he was getting nervous for like the point of both of us. Like, he was nervous because we were both spending a lot of money and we were both doing it, and he knew how important getting married was to me. He knew how important a wedding was to me. And him sat there, I can even remember, like, we sat in the kitchen on the sofa, and I remember saying, well, we need to make a decision. Are we going to do this or are we not? Like, you know, what's going on? I'll support you in whatever you want. And I kind of put his needs before, like, actually mine. I'll come back to that in a second. But I think one of the hardest things is, it's like, you go from planning this whole day and you've got your wedding dress planned, like I'd picked out my wedding dress, you've got your venue booked, which we had our venue booked, and it goes from that to no wedding, no vows, just a day that just exists. And you're like, how the hell am I supposed to exist on that day? Like, how am I supposed to get through this day that should have been the happiest day of my life, and at one point was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives and a commitment to each other? That just goes. And how am I supposed to get through that day knowing how different life could have been and what could have been? And I really struggled with that, because I think what men struggle to deal with, and I say men because it's the women that pick out the wedding dress. When I stood in the wedding dress shop and I put my wedding dress on twice, I fell in love with 2 dresses, one in London, one in a town near me. And I stood there and I thought to myself, this is what my ex is going to see when I greet him at the end of the aisle. And I am so excited for him to see me looking like this. And I'm so excited for what this means. And I did it in the shop in London, and I was like, this is the one. Said to my best friend, this is the dress, like, this is the one that I want. And we were having a really small wedding, so I only took my best friend with me. I wanted it to be a surprise to my mum. I wanted it to be a surprise to my sisters. And I hadn't at the time realised how much fun I took out of picking my wedding dress. I'll never do that ever again. I'll always take my mum and my sisters, because, like, if you listen to all my other episodes, you'll hear me say that I do want a big fat wedding. I don't want to just make it small and minimalistic and just have close family and friends. Like, yes, I want all those things, but I also want to invite their partners and have their plus ones, and I want it to be huge. And I'm unsure how I will finance this, but it will happen. If my dad listened to this, he'll probably be like, it absolutely is not. However, it will. I am going to do it so differently then. But I had that feeling in the second shot, and you're standing in front of a mirror and you're wearing the dress that you're going to walk down the aisle. And in my head, all I was thinking about was like, oh my God, he's going to love me in this dress. He loved anything figure hugging. He loved the fact that I had curves. He loved the fact that I had a bum, boobs. And this dress just showcased everything. And I remember my best friend saying, like, oh my God, he is going to love you in this. And I felt amazing in it, and I knew that he would think that I looked amazing in it. And I made that big decision with him in mind. And they're the things that people don't think of, like, oh, they cancelled their wedding day, at least she didn't make it down the aisle. Yeah, at least I didn't make it down the aisle, but I had envisioned making it down the aisle a full year before, because you have to pick your wedding dress out so early because of, like, alterations and getting it ordered in and all the rest of it. I had accepted and affirmed that that's what I was going to look like on my wedding day. I knew exactly what veil I was going to wear. I knew exactly how I was going to have my hair. I envisioned myself walking down the aisle in our venue, and that is so much to process than, oh, at least you didn't, waste your time and make it down the aisle. No, but I'm having to deal with the fact that I didn't make it down the aisle, like, I didn't get the wedding day. Am I grateful that I didn't get the wedding day? Yeah, of course I am. Like, I am so glad that I didn't marry him, and that this wasn't 6 months later and he was having cold feet saying that he didn't want to get married in the first place. And some people would say that he did me a favour. Yes, he did, but I would never give him the satisfaction of saying that he did me a good favour at all. If I knew what I knew now, then we wouldn't be in a relationship. I would have walked away, but I found out things after he left me, so I didn't really have much of a choice. But I think the fact that I remember staring at the calendar and thinking, how on earth am I going to get through this day? And I think, first of all, I numbed it out completely, massively. And I wanted to split this down into, like, mentally coping and practically coping. And mentally, initially I numbed it out. I blocked it out. I scrolled endlessly on the internet trying to find girls saying that they'll want to get married again, even though they had it taken away from them. Couldn't find anything. Couldn't find any content to do with like missing your wedding day and not being able to have the wedding day that you planned because your ex left you. I just slept a lot on it, and it was one of the biggest heartbreaks, I think, the fact that I didn't make it down the aisle. That was really difficult for me. You know, I'm really honest, and I say about, you know, having to take my engagement ring off, and the pride element and just everything that surrounded my wedding day was like really, really hard for me to process. And I didn't grieve it at all. I just numbed it out, blocked it out, said I never want to get married ever again, and said I'm never getting married ever again. I'm never going to get engaged to her, and the next person that I meet, I'm going to say don't bother proposing because the answer's going to be no. I numbed it out completely. And then when I started going to therapy, my therapist said, you know, with the wedding, and I was like, oh, it is what it is, like, you know, cancelled, got the money back, whatever. Like I think we lost about $7,500 on the deposit, but what can you do? And she was like, you're numbing this out, you're blocking it out, and it's something that you need to process because it's huge. And just like a wedding anniversary would be, if you did make it down the aisle, it's huge. You need to process it. You need to be able to come to terms with the fact that, you know, you have got married, or you, then she was saying to me, and it obviously is different if you were married, but she was saying to me, you need to process the fact that you didn't make it down the aisle. And I was like, who wants to sit there and think, I didn't make it down the aisle? Nobody. I'm definitely not going to sit here and talk to you about that. Sometimes I used to push back on my therapist more than I actually realised. She must have thought, oh my God, she is a nightmare. What mood is she going to be in today? And she gave me one piece of advice, and that was, grief doesn't need a witness to be real. So I think she gave it me in a way that it was like connected to weddings. Obviously, you need a witness for it to be real. And she said, in this instance, you don't need somebody to be able to see what you're going through. You don't need to tell your ex, you know, what could have been. You don't need to grieve out loud this wedding that you did have, or you didn't have, or you didn't quite make it. You don't need to grieve out loud for it to be real. Just because you didn't make it down the aisle doesn't mean that it's any less real. You had the emotions in the wedding dress shop. You had the emotions when you were walking around your wedding venue. You've dealt with all the emotions, all the happiness. And, you know, it came up on my Facebook the other day of like celebrating, we've just booked our wedding venue. You know, we celebrated that. I've always said that as a couple, we celebrated like the smallest things. Everything was a win to us. So we took nothing for granted. We always were so humble about everything, and celebrating, like, you know, booking our wedding venue was just amazing. And I remember coming back and being like, let's have a few drinks, we're really excited. And it wasn't during COVID, it was towards the end of COVID that we booked for like the following year when we knew that COVID would be over. So like I remember having some drinks on the patio and just really celebrating something that was going to be like so special to us. And when my therapist said that grief doesn't need a witness, it was like, hold on a second, that is so true. Just because it didn't happen doesn't mean that I don't get to grieve it. I can grieve it because I went through all the emotions that everybody that did make it down the aisle would have also gone through. I would go as far as to say that, you know, when you get engaged and when you get proposed to, that's the moment that like I was more upset about losing, because it's just you and him in that moment, and it's a moment that was so special to me. Everybody shares your wedding day because everyone's like celebrating your love. So I think that getting engaged and, you know, being proposed to was a harder thing for me to get over, but I definitely dulled down my emotions with the wedding day because I didn't make it and we didn't have the wedding day that I planned, but I shouldn't have done. And so my first bit of advice would be, just because you didn't have the wedding doesn't mean you don't get to grieve it. You can still grieve it, and how you spend this day is really important, and how you protect yourself from your feelings is also really important. So practically on this topic, you know, with the date and stuff, practically speaking, what did I do? The first thing I did was take it out of my calendar. I took it out of my calendar because I was like, that is not a reminder that I need to be reminded of. My best friend agreed that we needed to be out the country, so we were out the country. But I know that that's not something that everybody can do, but we did. We went to Greece. But that was the first thing I did. I took it out of my calendar. Don't forget that you've probably had that put in. My wedding planner was on it with things like that. She sent me diary invites, everything. I had it all in my calendar. She then cancelled it, so the things came out of my calendar, but I doubled up because I'm like that, super organised. And so I took it out of my calendar and I was like, nope, that's coming out. Well, it's got to come out because it's not a date that I want to be remembering. I then unfollowed every single wedding dress shop, wedding venue, wedding caterers, wedding favours, anything to do with wedding, I unfollowed on Instagram, because yes, you will do this again, but you will do it with someone completely different. And I always used to think like, oh, what happens if I unfollow that wedding dress page on Instagram, but I'm never going to be able to find it again? This is what girls think like. Oh, my Pinterest board, get rid of it. There is no need for you to keep any of this stuff, because when you do it again, it will be so different. It will be with somebody that you might not need to make a wedding dress Pinterest board, because your partner said, wear what's something what you want to wear, you will be comfortable in, what you will look gorgeous in anything. And you don't have to say like, do you like this? Do you like that? They might have visions. I've spoken about my best friend, and my best friend's partner is so involved in the wedding planning, like so involved in the wedding planning. I don't think he could be any more involved in the wedding planning, to be fair. And, you know, you might meet somebody that's like that. My ex definitely wasn't that person. He just seemed like he wanted whatever I wanted and wasn't really involved. And I've had a comment on, I think, my TikTok from a girl that said, you know, I feel like I'm planning my wedding on my own, and no one should feel like that. You know, you should be questioning whether is the person you want to be marrying if you are feeling like you are planning a wedding by yourself. That's horrible. And this isn't you just erasing anything. This isn't you being cutthroat and being like, well, I'm not getting married, so I'm going to delete it all. This is just for your mental state around that date. You don't want to be reminded of weddings. I went so far into this that I would mute things on my explore page. So you can really easily on Instagram just click on a post and say, don't want to see anything like this, and it will slowly, after about 3 or 4 days, if you're on it, it will slowly stop dragging things through like that through your algorithm. And I think because my best friend's getting married this year, I think my algorithm at the moment is a little bit weddingy, because she sends me like reels and pictures and stuff. But I don't find it triggering in any way, shape or form. Like I said, it's something that like I'm excited about now and excited about to do in my future. I think that the less you see on your Instagram, the less triggering you will find. And I think these are like little steps into a new chapter with you, in that life will continue. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to get down the aisle ever again. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get engaged ever again. It just means at this current present time, seeing things like that is probably going to trigger you. And what you don't want to do is go back into a spiral of like, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? How come I didn't get married? You know, it's hard enough seeing people get engaged and getting married around you, and then switching on your Instagram and it being all over, or your Pinterest and it being all over there. Like, just limit the amount you see on weddings, just to prepare you for going through that day. What you don't want to do on that day is pick up your phone and be instantly reminded. If you've forgotten to take the date out of your calendar, if you can see your engagement ring, just put it somewhere where you don't have to see it. Really think about the triggers that are going to trigger you on that date and how you're going to manage them, because it's going to be a tough date. And like I said, I was out the country, and that's why I know that I have done an episode on this before somewhere, because I remember talking to you guys about being out the country. So I didn't want to talk too much about, you know, what I actually did, because I was in Greece and my ex messaged me on the day of our anniversary. And, you know, you can say to them, don't contact me on the anniversary of that date. He felt obliged to, and I'm glad that he did. But my best friend was furious. Like, absolutely furious. And I think the one thing that I struggled with on that day is that, like, once upon a time I said yes to the ring, he said yes to the wedding venue, I said yes to the dress, everything was a yes, and everything was like full pelt ahead. everything was positive. We were getting through, you know, the planning and, you know, people saying that they could come, and everything was just a yes. And I think I got caught up with everything being a yes because my ex wasn't being honest with me, and I couldn't see that until, like I said, you know, the January where he was a bit like, oh, I don't know whether I want this wedding. That was like, oh, I don't know whether I want this wedding, not, oh, I don't know whether I want to marry you. Just to reiterate that. So like I was saying to him, well, we need to do something that we both want. And I remember having the conversation and being like, oh, I really, really want to marry you. I really want to marry you. So whatever you want, then, you know, we're going to have, because I want to marry you. And everything was coloured by love with those questions. However, when I look back, I think I was so wrapped up in the role of being like a fiance and a future wife, I hadn't really thought about what he was saying at the time when he said, I'm unsure about the wedding. He shouldn't have been unsure about the wedding. He should have been sure about the wedding, because he asked me to marry him. What did he think the outcome was going to be? And I'd already kind of said, like, let's have a small wedding, when really deep down I knew that I didn't want a small wedding, and that, you know, I didn't want to cut out my friends' partners just because they didn't make the cut of like the numbers and stuff. I didn't want to be doing that. I wanted to be able to say to people, like, if you've got a plus one, bring them. I wanted to be able to say that. I remember my sister saying that to literally everybody on her wedding day, like, you know, you and a plus one. If I had single friends, I would love to be able to say to them, like, if you've got a boyfriend. That is happening to me more and more. Can I just say, I've got 2 weddings next year and 3 weddings the year after, and everybody has said to me, Lou, do you want a plus one? I'm like, guys, I know this is not putting any pressure on me, but it is also putting pressure on me. But also, yes, give me a plus one, because if I've got a boyfriend, you best believe that I'm taking him. So now when I look back, I think, amongst all the planning, did I do a lot of it on my own? Yes. Like, was he pushing to get the invites sent out? Not really. And did I ignore my gut on those things? Yeah. And like, I don't blame myself. Like, I'm not to blame here, but I should have probably been really listening and homing into like what my gut was saying. And in the middle of like me being this happily engaged fiance, I should have probably also realized that, oh, he was displaying some things where I thought, actually, no, that's not fair. Like I said, if I sat and I thought about it, and it would be really easy to probably blame myself, and I don't, because you're always coming from a point of love, and I was always coming from a point of love. And I always say to people, like, how was I supposed to know? How was I supposed to know that these conversations that we were having were actually him telling me that, like, I don't know whether I want to be with you? No one thinks like that, because if I didn't want to be with somebody, then I would sit down and have an adult and mature conversation with them. And I would say, this isn't working, this is how I'm feeling, or I'm just going through this a little bit. Or I would be perfectly honest and say, you know, if I had met somebody new, I've met somebody new. You know, people aren't going to want to hear that. And I know that, and I'm fully aware of that. That was the last thing that I wanted to hear. But I just think the doubt that I have, because the doubt that I was left with because my ex couldn't have those conversations, was so much more damaging than having to think about the fact that I didn't make it down the aisle, think about the fact that I didn't have a wedding. I was just kept in the dark about a lot of things. And when I think about the conversations that we had before we split up, I think, God, no wonder he was like struggling, because I was there saying, it's fine, we can do whatever you want to do. If you want to have a registry office wedding, then that's fine. And I was really compromising on all the dreams that I had as a little girl. But again, I did that because it came from a place of love, and everything that you did and every conversation that you had probably came from a place of love, and you cannot blame yourself for that. It is unfair. You will go to war with yourself if you think, if you just what? If you just called them out, were they going to tell the truth? You do not know. If you just sat them down and said, what is the reason that you've been distant? Would they have told the truth? Probably not. What is the reason that you've now decided, since we've booked our wedding, that you don't actually want a wedding? What is the reason for that? Would they have told the truth? Probably not. all these things that you can go over and over and over in your head about are things that will make you go to war with yourself. And what you have to remember is that you came from a place of love, they came from a place of uncertainty, and that is not your problem. If they're uncertain about somebody, I think I said this, did I say it on my Patreon when I was like, I seen this TikTok and it was this girl that says like, if you're not engaged after 2 years, then what are you doing? Like, if you both have said that you want to get married and you're not engaged after 2 years, what are you doing? And yes, I know that everybody's opinion on this differs, but it made me laugh because I thought, yeah, like, we were together for 14 years. Why weren't we engaged? We had the house. We've got enough money behind us. Why were we not getting engaged? Why were we not married? Something's not adding up. And I never blame myself for that, because you are kept in the dark, and it is horrible. It is a horrible place to be. But I think just going back to mentally how I coped with the day, obviously I said that I was away, but actually I was so glad that I did have the distraction that I had, but it was still there with me and it lingered. And I think if it was closer, then I would have struggled. If he had left me in the July and it was the August, like, I would have really struggled. But I think if you've got things like, I had a whole list of suppliers and, you know, the wedding place brochure and pictures of me in the wedding dress. And I had a lot of stuff. I say I have a lot of stuff. I had more things to remind me that I was going to get married than he did. Definitely. 1000%. He knew that his stag do was going to be in Ibiza. That was it. And so my practical advice here would be, if you have your wedding dress, or if you have invitations, if you have anything to do with the wedding, in fact, take the dress out of that for 2 seconds. If you have anything to do with the wedding, anything at all, box it up. Do not throw it away. It's too much for you. It's too much. Do not be doing that. Box it up and label it "just not now." Tape it up, put it in your loft. Because I think throwing things out like this, like the wedding invitations, is just too much to do. It makes things final that it hasn't happened, and you're still trying to mentally process it. If you're reminded of stuff like wedding invitations being on the side, save the dates, or wedding replies, or anything like that, it might be too much for you to throw them away. I know that when I threw away the ball that said "Last Christmas is a Miss," the December of the year that he left, that I was ready to do that. It was literally like 10 months after he left, so I was ready. But depending on the timings of like when everything's happening and the timeline of your breakup, do not do anything that makes you feel like shit, this is final, because it makes you feel worse. And like I said, your brain has to catch up with you. You mentally have to process something and then practically process it. I do think mentally you process things a lot slower, and sometimes practically coping with things like throwing things away, blocking, deleting, like, you know, I've said delete stuff off of Instagram, but that's Instagram. But actual physical things that remind you of your wedding, I just think box it up, just not now. It's going to happen again, just not now. It's not, this is trash, like, this is rubbish, we're throwing it away. It just makes you resent weddings, and it makes you resent the wedding day, and that's not what you want to achieve here. You don't want to be in the mindset that I was in. You know, I always say I sit here and give you advice to prevent you from being in the situations that I was in, and I hated anything to do with weddings and engagement for about a year. It was horrible, and you do not want to be in that position at all. And it gives you permission to not force closure, because it's totally okay not to know what to do with all that stuff yet. And this is why I left the dress out of it. My best friend's just sold her wedding dress, and I think that's the best thing for her, best thing to do. You know, she's in a new relationship now, and I think it would be a bit weird if her wedding dress turned up to the house and it would be like, oh, I don't really know what to do with this. She's in a new relationship. She clearly has moved on that little bit more, that, you know, her sister went and picked it up and her friend has organised to sell it for her. Great. If the wedding dress is hanging in your wardrobe and is in your house, do exactly the same. Box it up, put it in the loft for when you are ready to cope with that. It's like taking your engagement ring off. Nobody says that you have to do certain things by certain times. Throwing things away, selling things, isn't going to make you feel better. If anything, it's probably going to make you feel worse. Box it up. Put the label on it, just not yet, or I'm not ready yet. And you've said it out loud, you've said it on the box, you know, the box is in the loft, and you know that it's there to deal with when you are ready. But I fully think that these things give you permission to not have to force your closure. Throwing things away is almost like forcing closure, and that is not the position you want to be in when you're already struggling with the fact that, you know, it's a pending anniversary of your wedding date. So just bear that in mind. Be kind to yourself when you are looking at things, and know that it is okay to look at a wedding invitation and burst into tears. It's horrible, but don't feel like your initial like knee-jerk reaction has to be to throw it away. That's not what you want to do. And finally, I just wanted to talk on the date itself and how you will cope with the date going forward, and how I coped with the day. And like I said, like I keep saying, I was in Greece, so I was on a beach party, just living my best life, just knowing it all, and, you know, pretending it didn't actually happen. And my ex was at a festival, and I think it made it worse, the fact that he was at a festival with one of my close friends, and it was just one of those things, like, we had mutual friends. We didn't have that many, but, you know, the mutual friends that we did have, he decided that he wanted to go to the festival with them, and I found out through her that he sat on the hill where we would sit, and he was very quiet, and he didn't really say a lot. And she said that she asked him if he was okay, and he said no. So that kind of made me feel better, because it was almost like he struggled as well on the day as much as I did. It doesn't make it easier to deal with, but I know that, you know, he was thinking of me on that day. Obviously he reached out and stuff, and that might not be the case for you on that day. So do not hold your intentions high that you are going to hear from your ex and that they're going to acknowledge the day at all or anything, because that was the only time that my ex acknowledged anything. He didn't acknowledge Valentine's Day, he didn't acknowledge our anniversary of when we got together, he didn't acknowledge anything like that, but he did acknowledge the wedding day. And I think that's because I drilled it into him how much I was struggling with the fact that, like, he took the wedding away from me. So I pretended like the day didn't exist in Greece. Probably drank a lot, you know, ate a lot. I had the best time with my best friend, but I would advise you not to do that. I would say the best thing you can do is to reclaim the date and make it your own, and make it something where, yes, you are acknowledging what the day is, but you aren't acknowledging it in the way that it's like you have lost something. And if I did things differently now, knowing what I know and knowing how I process things and knowing what helps me process things, if I did this day again, I would go to somewhere where I'd never been before, and I'd take my journal with me, and it would be a completely new place, nothing to do with my ex, nothing, no connection, never been there ever, research it. And I would write out in my journal exactly how I was feeling in that place, and I would cry, and I would let out all my emotion. And then I would follow that with doing something joyful. Headphones in, podcast on, hot chocolate, nice drink, an ice cream if it's the summer. Wherever you've taken yourself to follow it with something joyful. You've acknowledged your emotions. You've said it's totally okay to feel like this. You're in a completely new place that is not reminding you of your ex. The only thing you're doing is journaling it out. And when you shut that journal, you are going to go and do something that feels good. It doesn't have to be like go and run a half marathon. It just has to feel good for you. Go and have a glass of wine somewhere. In fact, actually, no, I take all of that back. I would make sure that there was a pub in the area or a bar or wherever I was, and I would go and have a glass of wine. And I would remind myself that this day belongs to me now. This is my day. Go and buy yourself some flowers. Go and get your favourite takeaway in that evening. This day belongs to you. It no longer is a day that is ours, because the hours doesn't exist anymore. And so if you spend the morning journaling in a new place, you know, and getting out all the emotion that revolves around the day being ours, and then you can shut your journal and make the day yours and completely yours. Go and buy yourself flowers, like I said. Go and sit in a pub that you like. And I think this would be a way of me reshaping my story and reshaping the way that I looked at the day. And you're acknowledging the day, you're feeling the emotions to the run up of the day. You're allowed to feel all these emotions. If you are listening to this and you're going through a wedding anniversary of like you actually did get married and it is a wedding anniversary, think of it as a day that like this was the day that I once loved. I loved so much because of my love for somebody else, and that love now I'm pouring into myself. That's what you have to think. That's what you have to say, because the day that, that this day can revolve around love as well. But you have to reframe your mind in the fact that the reason why you loved it is because you were so in love, but you are also so in love with yourself, and you're working on being in love with yourself. So why can't this day continue to be a day about love? Go and buy yourself some jewelry. I was always a jewelry lover, and I just always just used to say to him, just get me jewelry, anything, a ring, like a Pandora ring. I collect them. I've realised that I don't actually wear them in these videos, but it's far too hot for rings today. Sorry, I digress. But go and spoil yourself. If they spoil you, go and spoil yourself. This day needs to be about you, and you need to remember that you can practice gratitude with grief. They can belong in the same room. Like, you are allowed to have the morning where you are grieving the day, and you are allowed to have the afternoon where you're celebrating the day, like you're celebrating yourself. I think this is really important, because I think a lot of people will think that just because you've had a sad morning doesn't mean you need to have a sad afternoon, The gratitude and the grief can live in the same room. You need to remember that. And it's not a case of starting new rituals. It's not a case of like starting new things on that day. Like, practically speaking, you don't have to go out and say to everybody, I'm going to throw a party on this day because this should have been like the wedding party. You can see on TikTok like the divorce parties and stuff, and I actually encourage people to do stuff like that because I think it's hilarious. But you don't need to do that. You need to make this day something easy to deal with and easy to swallow. You might not want to be on social media on that day surrounded by couples that are in love, or have just done a baby announcement, or just an engagement announcement, or have just got married. You might decide that today's going to be a day where you're off social media for the day, because that's going to protect your peace. Do something quiet, but something intentional with your day, so you know that you're not just moping around, sitting in the house, potentially because I was in the house that we built doing. I think that was important to me. I think that's why I said we should go away, because I didn't want to be in the town, I didn't want to be in the house, I didn't want to be in the vicinity of anything to do with my ex. So I went to Greece, and obviously that is an option if you want to go abroad. I didn't want to make this too much about what I would do, and I know that going away isn't accessible to everybody, and I want these podcasts to be relatable. So yes, you can go away, and it's easy to go away. If it's easy to go away, because that's what I did. But on the flip side, I want this episode to make sure that it hits everybody, and people might not have that luxury of being able to go away for whatever reason. You might just be thinking, no, that's a little bit too much. So I wanted to give you things and practical advice, things that you can do, so you're not sat thinking, oh my god, I have no idea what to do with this day. It's also knowing that you don't just have to do loads just to distract yourself. That's why journaling in the morning and being upset and crying is quite important. Letting the emotion, acknowledging your emotion, like I always say, that's quite important to do in the morning, and then reclaim the day in the afternoon. And if you don't want to be on your own, make it known that you don't want to be on your own. Tell your parents, tell your friends you don't want to be alone on that day. My best friend really pulled through with the holiday to Greece, but just say in the evening, can we have dinner? Or you might want to be by yourself, and you might just want to order a takeaway that you've never had a takeaway before. I ordered a Turkish takeaway the other day, just to digress a little bit. Never ordered a Turkish takeaway with my ex in my whole entire life. Turkish is now my new takeaway, and I'm learning this 3 years post breakup. So these things do happen. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, oh my god, I'm really dreading everything to do with the wedding anniversary, whether you made it down the aisle or if you didn't make it down the aisle, just know that you are not weak, and the way that you are feeling, just because maybe it looks like your ex isn't struggling, like, it does not matter. You are not weak, you're only human. And maybe you could make this date something new, and maybe you could realize that you're going through a process, you're processing your emotions, and it's going to take time, and you're probably going to feel quite rough towards the day. You're probably going to find the day hard. I'm not saying that anything that I've suggested is going to make you feel massively better, but it's going to be something that you can prepare for. And I think if you're prepared for something and you know that what you're doing, you know, is going to make you feel better, and I don't think there is anything wrong with booking the day off work. I know that like most of you, like obviously if you're booking, if it's coming up for a wedding that obviously you booked and you didn't quite make it, it'll probably be at the weekend. Wedding anniversaries, I know, can fall on different days, but book the day off work, or book half a day, go to a spa or something. Go and do something that doesn't distract you, but makes the day like, this was a day that I used to show my love for somebody else, or this was a day that I was going to show my love to somebody else, and I'm going to show that level of love to myself. That's how you need to reframe the day. And I don't think it's a reminder of what could have happened. I don't think that's a thing, but it could have been my wedding day. Yes, that is true. That you can't argue with facts. It could have been your wedding day. But don't look at it as a symbol of like something that didn't happen, because there will be things later on in life. There'll probably be moments later on in life where there'll probably be a time later on in life where it will happen. So don't look at it as like this didn't happen, because, you know, with me, and taking my example, I know I'm going to get married in the future. So don't look at it as a day like that. Look at it as a day as a reminder of your strength, and a reminder that you are going to get through this, and the reminder of how far you've come in your breakup so far already. Remind yourself of love. Remind yourself of the loving person you are. You might not feel like the loving person that you are. I talk about this a lot and say I lost a lot of my loving characteristics because I wasn't a girlfriend, and I didn't know how to be the loving person without the girlfriend title. Learn from these days and learn how it feels to love yourself and to do things, nice things for yourself, and romanticize your life. And it doesn't have to be big gestures, going to buy you flowers, going to buy your favorite film, or going to buy your favorite snacks or favorite dinner. It doesn't have to be big fat romantic gestures to yourself, but equally, if you want to go and do big fat romantic gestures to yourself, go and do it. What's stopping you? And just remember that you will have the ability to carry on going even though your story has changed. And I don't remind you of this enough, and I remind myself of this when things get tough. You have the ability to carry on going even though your story has massively changed. The story that you wrote for yourself, the story that you wrote with somebody else has changed, and you have carried on going. And that is a symbol of your strength. And this day should be a symbol of your strength. 1000%, because your story has changed so much, and yet you're still here. You're listening to me. I always say, people that come and listen to me, you obviously want to heal. You have the ability to be able to heal. Otherwise, you wouldn't have found me. You wouldn't have reached out. So just think of all those things on this day, and just make sure that you are prepared. And if you want to reach out to me, then please do. I will always reply. Like I said, I reply to every single DM. It might be a bit late, but I always reply to everything that I can. And so I hope this episode has helped. I would love to hear your feedback if it has helped. I would love to hear from you guys just in general. If you've got any topics of conversation that you want me to cover, then let me know. If not, then if you want extra content, like I always say, join me on my Patreon. I've got TikTok, I've got Instagram. You can find all of those by going through the links on my bio of all my social media platforms. If you haven't joined me on my Patreon, then I will speak to you guys next Friday. Look after yourself. Bye.